Thank you. I'll take just a couple of seconds to talk about our real estate group. You've got a card there on your table. I see many of our clients here in the room that we've helped in the past. We kind of steal from the City of Round Rock motto, purpose, passion, prosperity. A healthy housing market leads to prosperity, and we take on our job with purpose and passion. And if you have a real estate need to either sell or buy a house or looking for investment properties, we have a great team, a great group. Lynn Moran's, who's our co-sponsor today with Network Funding. You got to have a good lender, and she's incredible. And talking about the banker's hours, I can call Lynn at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night if I have to, and she's there to help us out. So we appreciate all your support and the support Round Rock has given us. Congressman John Carter was re-elected in November 2012 to his 6th term representing Texas' 31st District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Carter was also selected this term as chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Appropriations, vice chairman on the Military Construction and Veteran Affairs Subcommittee, and to his 3rd term as co-chairman of the Bipartisan House-Army Caucus. He's been a member of the House Appropriations Committee since 2004 and also sits on the Subcommittee on Energy and Water. Congressman Carter is one of the few House members who has authored legislation signed into law under both Presidents Bush and Obama. In spite of now being a veteran congressman, John Carter is still known as Judge for having served over 20 years on the District Court bench in Williamson County, which he won as the first county-wide elected Republican in Williamson County history. Judge Carter was born and raised in Houston and has spent his adult life in Central Texas. He holds a degree in history from Texas Tech University and graduated from the University of Texas Law School in 1969. While working on oil wells in the North Sea as a summer job while in college, John Carter met his wife, Erica, in Holland, and the two have been happily married since 1968. The Carters have 4 adult children, live in Round Rock, and attend Central Baptist Church. And I don't think I need to share with anybody in this room the contributions that the judge has given this community, not only before he was a congressman, but since he's been one. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Carter.
See, you got to have a drink. You know, we had one of our politicians got criticized for taking a drink of water while he was speaking. Well, if he had been in Texas with me, he'd have needed it because I can hardly talk. I've got the allergies that go with Round Rock. God bless Round Rock. But let me tell you something. I told a fellow back there in the hall just a minute ago. Every morning you look out the window and you see Round Rock, Texas, you say a prayer that you are blessed because you live in the greatest place on earth. I see lots of other places, and believe me, this is it. Okay? That's why I come home every weekend. You know, anybody accuse me of being from Washington, I'd have to shoot them. I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that are in the news today. The budget, now 2 budgets, miraculously, the sequester process, and immigration. Now, these are 3 topics that are going to be pretty darn important in the next 6 months. So I'm going to go a little bit about it and then I'll let you ask some questions. And like always, if I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know, I won't. That's the way it works. Start off with, I heard a joke. I got to tell you a joke because I thought this was cute. I've already told some of you. Man and woman been married 45 years, and unfortunately the gentleman passed away. And his wife was talking to the funeral director at the funeral parlor in their little town, and he says, "Hey, I got this brand new computerized music machine. It'll play any music you ever heard. So if you have special music requests for the funeral, I'll be glad to help you." And she said, "Well, you know, my husband loved Elvis Presley. Would you play Love Me Tender as we bring down the casket down the aisle?" And he said, "Yeah, no problem. It'll do it, no problem." So he pushed the button for Love Me Tender, and as they rolled the casket down the aisle, Elvis started singing Return to Sender. I thought that was a cute joke. Okay. Everybody knows what a budget is. Most of you have had to live under one in some form or fashion most of your life, either your parents' budget, your budget, your boss's budget, your own budget for your business, but you had to plan out how your year is going to be economically. And it is a plan, it is a guiding instrument that you use to maintain the momentum you need to make life better. And in Congress, that's its purpose too. It has two purposes, two main purposes. It's a guide for spending, it's a guide for estimating revenues, but in addition, it also has another purpose, which is to tell the Appropriations Committee, which I have the privilege to have served on now for almost 10 years, tells the Appropriations Committee the numbers that will be accurate for not only discretionary spending, which is what we're fighting about every year when you hear us talking about cutting spending or raising revenues. We're talking about discretionary spending. And the other big spending item, which is locked in and is things we don't deal with on a yearly basis, and that's entitlement spending or mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is going to get spent whether we do anything else. We can even not show up to work, and mandatory spending is going to happen. And the big tickets item on that are Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And to a lesser extent, some veterans benefits, which are really not mandatory, but we treat them as if they're mandatory. So those are the big ticket items. Those items always get spent no matter what. They accelerate. They have a COLA acceleration. They go up every year. The baseline rises every year. It's a never-growing, never-ending obligation of the federal government. And then about a third, maybe as much as 40%, is the numbers that we fight over every year. And this is how much is left after we obligate the mandatory spending for the next year. So when you see the big pie of the revenues we get, you'll see about a third triangle. That's what we fight over. And the rest of that pie is what is mandatory and gets spent every year. Just as an aside note, as we discuss whether or not we should be cutting spending or raising spending, whether we should be raising revenues or freezing revenues, all of this relates to that big pie, that whole picture. But it doesn't give the one unspoken obligation, which we always seem to not talk about publicly, is what that mandatory number means as we look down the future of time. And as we look down the future of time, you all have probably heard within the last 2 weeks somebody say, we have debt of 16 trillion, almost 17 trillion dollars. 1,000 billion. A billion's 1,000 million. A million's 1,000,000. Figure it out. A lot of money. Okay. Soon to be 17 trillion. They've got that clock that just spins those numbers. You've seen that on television. Well, what they're not talking about is the $66 trillion of unfunded mandates. Things we have promised people we would pay in the future. There are people, there are children. I happen to be proud to have 3 grandchildren now. Went from 0 to 3 in 6 months. That's not bad. I told those kids, keep working, keep working. But seriously, those kids were born, my 3 grandchildren, they're going to be part of this big obligation. And the chances are pretty good we'll be broke before they're my age. I'm as old as the hills, but, still, that's a lifetime. But back to the budget. For the last 4 years, the House of Representatives, of which I'm a member, and when people say Congress, Congress, most people think House of Representatives, but the Congress is the big body, House and Senate, and senators are technically congressmen too, but they would hit you if you called them a congressman because they're a senator. And what does it mean to be a senator? It means a 6-year term and a lot of sleep. So, in fact, whenever we have serious business in the House, we tell everybody, shh, not too loud. Don't wake the senators. They can screw everything up, But seriously, we're supposed to each pass a budget. We have continuously passed a budget every year since I've been in Congress. The House of Representatives has. But about 4 years ago, actually more than that, I guess 6 years ago, it started becoming irrelevant to the Democrat Party about budgets. They said they're really irrelevant. It's just the Budget Act that makes them important, and that's really to give us some numbers, and it really doesn't matter whether we have a budget or not. And so we've had some problems getting a budget out of the Senate. But for the last 4 years, there's been no budget out of the Senate. So when I tell you that today, it looks like we're going to have two budgets, one for the Senate and one for the House, this is a first in 4 years event. We should all celebrate. We might have a national holiday, except we wouldn't be able to pay for it because of sequester. But other than that, we can do it. What's going on with this budget is we have a budget that will balance and put this country paying its bills on time and without having to raise the debt ceiling by 2023. The Senate has a bill that will never balance. And their answer to that is, you don't need to balance your budget. And I guess if you have this concept that, well, we print the money, so we don't need to balance the budget, maybe that's what they're thinking, but it doesn't work that way. The more you print, the cheaper the money gets. And driving over here today, we were talking about what things cost. When I got married to one of the young kids who just went out and priced a pickup truck for $33,000. I pointed out to him the first house my wife and I bought cost us $28,000. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a good neighborhood. And now I've got a kid sitting next to me that's talking about $33,000 for a simple pickup. That's how much value our dollar has gone down since I was first married. Living in Round Rock, Texas. When you think about that in the big scope of things, that's a big deal. He's right back there. Gave him a little education on money. What does it mean to the budget? It means some good things. It means we have the opportunity for both houses of Congress, Senate and House, to do appropriations bills. Now, all spending technically originates in the House of Representatives according to our Constitution. However, it takes a budget under the Budget Act for each of the houses to be able to go forward on an appropriation bill. And then bills of appropriation, spending bills, is what we're talking about. We are the spenders. We spend the money. The House has spending bills, the Senate has spending bills. They don't generally match up. The spending bills of the Senate will be built on their budget. The spending bills of the House will be built on our budget. So they won't match up. But they will go to a conference committee where the Senate and House meet together. That's my allergies, please forgive me. The good news is I'll be one of the most popular things you ever met. A politician who can't talk. So, let me continue. That means we can actually get an appropriations bill passed for every subject, which we have not done for 4 years. Now, how does that become important? Lots of reasons, but I want to take that to tie you into the other subject matter I talked about, sequester. Now, the whole debate for the last 4 years, as far as the House is concerned, because we are in the majority in the House, but we are in the minority in the government. The Senate is controlled by the Democrats. Of course, the President of the United States is a Democrat. So the executive branch and half of the legislative branch is controlled by the Democratic Party, and the House of Representatives is controlled by the Republican Party as far as who has the majority of the votes. It's all about counting votes. So the discussion has been, we've got to stop spending more than we make, and we've got to stop borrowing money to pay our bills. We've got to start ourselves on a pathway, instead of everything going up, going down. Not the economy going down, but the reckless spending going down. And that is the debate. It's the ongoing conflict in Washington today. It is the conflict between the Congress and the President of the United States. It drives the wagon of Washington. And so in the great debates and the big fiscal cliffs that we've come up to, it seems every time we actually talk to each other is 24 hours before the government is going to crash. And there's several things that cause the government to crash, and one is raising the debt ceiling and balancing the budget and other things. Well, and funding the government. You fund the government with appropriations bills. But if you don't do a budget, then you don't have appropriations bills. The other way you fund the government is called a continuing resolution, which basically says we continue the spending at last year's level. We've done CRs for the last 4 years. So CRs means continuing resolutions. So we're spending, with some exceptions, which is not worth going into. We're spending at 08 levels. No, 10 levels. Anyway, 4 years ago, whatever that was. It's 09 levels. Because we're in CRs. Appropriations can go up or go down depending on what is voted out of those particular committees. Now, where does sequester fit into this program? In the discussion upon the last extension of the CR and the budget resolution extension, the President came to the Congress and said, I'm willing to go forward based upon the numbers you have presented, which was some reductions in spending, if you will agree to a sequester as the solution for this problem. Well, unless you've been around 20 or 30 years in Washington, the first thing you do is turn to the guy next to you and say, what in the hell is a sequester? Because nobody knew except people who had been around for a long time. A sequester is a ruling that you will cut a percentage of every program across the board. Now it's important, program, not department, every program. Some departments can have hundreds of programs. Every program will have a percentage cut across the board. It doesn't work well in the federal government process. It causes great troubles to be a sequester. And once you sit down and examine it, you say, why would anybody in their right mind do the sequester? The easy example is most of you in some form or fashion contract. So if I make a contract, I don't know, with Ms. McLeod back there, to buy 100 cups, 1 cup, 10 cups a year for the next 10 years, at a set price. And that program says the price is $1. And the government comes in and says, wait a minute, you got to take 8% off that $1. That's all you can pay. We're cutting your budget. All you can pay for that cup is $1 less than 8%. So now I come back to Ms. McLeod, who I've contracted with her for 5 years to buy these cups, and say, I can only pay you 92 cents. She says, wait a minute, that's no deal. You see the conflict? Now make that Abrams tanks. It becomes a big issue. Or F-35 fighter jets, or whatever you want to call it. So those cuts have ramifications besides the ones you're hearing about in the sky is falling discussion that's going on right now. Everybody said it'll never happen. It'll be fixed by the super committee. The super committee came and ready to fix. The Senate was there trying to work a little bit. The House was there working real hard. And the presidency was there. They didn't work, and they didn't want to work, and they wouldn't agree. They died. And then we said, well, okay, nobody else is going to be responsible, so the House passed a bill to set aside sequester in August. Well, just before the August recess. The Senate threw it away. So after the August and September, the House passed the second bill to fix sequester, and it came up and was passed by the House sometime in October, and the Senate threw it away. In fact, the Senate has thrown away every bill the House has sent them in the last 4 years. So we came up on the day before sequester, and then 2 weeks before, the president started touring around the country telling us all the horrible things that were going to happen to us. We went to sequester. And, you know, a blithering idiot released a bunch of prisoners out of the custody of my particular part of the world, Homeland Security, and we'll get into that later. But anyway, the bottom line was now everybody in America is scared to death of the sequester because they think the sky is falling. My daddy used to call that Chicken Little syndrome. Yesterday I was with the newspaper in Killeen. It was the young lady that was a special reporter for Fort Hood who was kind of really pretty unhappy with the whole situation of sequester. She told me, I'm just speaking on what she told me, that they couldn't drive their pickup off of Fort Hood, even to get it inspected, without a piece of paper from the Post. I believe that's what she said. Press secretary's right over there. And she said, well, can't you get a piece of paper? They won't let us. They say we're broke. We can't have any copies of anything. There'll be no copies made on Fort Hood because we're broke. And the White House basically has said, don't make any copies. Now let's examine this and you tell me if this makes sense. You know what the budget is for the Defense Department? In excess of $500 billion this year. Now, in excess, it's like $580 billion. But I just say in excess of $500 billion. Do you know what the gross earnings of the top 100 Fortune 500 companies are in the United States? Anybody want to guess? $464 billion. So they can't give a kid a piece of paper from Fort Hood, Texas, when the entire gross revenue of the entire top 100 corporations in the world is less than the budget that we give the Defense Department. And they say the sky is falling. And I'm not against the Defense Department, but it's the biggest number we got. We can cut spending and do it sensibly without being stupid and making some poor married E3 upset his wife so much that she jumps all over a congressman over at the newspaper for keeping her husband from getting the car inspected. That's the glamorous life of a congressman. But seriously, we got to quit thinking like government and think like people. This is not hard stuff. Everybody in your own family knows what you don't have to do. You know, my dad used to say, whenever I'd say, I want this, he said, I don't finance wants. I finance needs. What do you need? He said, he used to say, they want ice, water, and hell, but they don't get it. Well, the point is, we have become an I want society, and what our government ought to be paying for is what we need in this society. And we start looking at things that way, we can do this. Sequester is going to be painful in some areas. It doesn't have to be near as painful as the press or the White House is painting it right now. And quite honestly, we have so much money we are spending. That little token that's going to be, it's actually 2.5% this year. It's just not going to be, it's like toothpicks at a banquet. It's not going to be that big a deal. But people will make it a big deal. And the White House can go fly over to Europe and bring Vice President Biden's Lincoln over there so he can drive around in it for $395 million. But we can't open the White House for school kids to go visit the White House, which is where all the school kids come to see. So look at these things yourself from a logical point of view and see if somebody's not manipulating it. It's quite a shame, as far as I'm concerned, for any political group to be manipulating some poor wife of a young soldier and putting fear in her heart when it's unnecessary and to do it for political gains. It's ridiculous. Okay, those are all the easy subjects. The next one's hard. And I'm going to tell you this as best I can. We are going to fix the immigration problem in Congress this year. It is not easy. We have a wide range of people who view how we should be fixing the immigration problem. Some of the things are ridiculous on the right, some of the things are ridiculous on the left. And somewhere in the middle is what we're going to do. I'll tell you that when I started in Congress, now 10 years ago, one of the first things I did was put together a Hispanic council, and we had immigration discussions for a whole year, and very heated discussions, real good attendance, got great information, and all of it narrowed down to three things. It needs to be fixed. Treat the people you're dealing with as human beings in a compassionate manner, and don't give up the rule of law. This is what came out of this discussion group. Your neighbors here in Round Rock and Georgetown made up the great body of that group of people. And that's basically narrowed down to the simplest form what they said we had to do. Most first, compassionate to the people who are going to be affected. They are human beings. They are families. They should be treated nicely. As nicely as can. With the rule of law. But don't give up the law for any purpose. The law keeps our society together. And it has to be done. 3.5 years ago, I joined a group of 20 men and women. The 10 most liberal members of Congress that we could find, and the 10 most conservative members of Congress we could find. Turns out all the liberals were Democrats and all the conservatives were Republicans. Just it worked out, I guess. But seriously, we had 20 of us started 3.5 years ago, at least twice a month, meeting in secret. Now, the reason I think our plan is going to be the best plan is because it is the subject of a miracle. Several people in this room, I see my former press secretary over here and others will tell you, keeping a secret for a month in Washington, D.C. is a miracle. The only bigger miracle is finding a parking place. But keeping a secret for 3.5 years is really a miracle. And how we did it, I don't know. But we made a vow that nobody would let the press become involved. So we never told anybody we were meeting. We met twice a month, sometimes 4 times a month, for 3.5 years. Hour to 2 hours a meeting. Went line by line and page by page. And we voted, and the vote had to be unanimous. One negative vote, we changed and started another direction. We found the direction that everybody can agree on every subject. This is why I think we have the product. You're going to hear about a lot of other products, but I think we have the product that is going to be reasonable to everybody. Quite honestly, nobody is going to think it's perfect because it's not going to lean one way or the other. It's going to be across the board. It's going to be fair to people. It's also going to be law and order. That's kind of my part. It's going to be tough in some areas, very lenient in others. It's going to change the visa system so that when we educate somebody, give them a PhD in electrical engineering, we don't ship them home. We hand them a green card and say, how'd you like to go to work in the United States of America? Because we need those people. And that's part of it that needs to be fixed. It's going to change the immigration system that brings, when one person comes in, all of a sudden 40 comes in after him. It's going to change that. Chain migration is going to be changed. A lot of things are going to be changed. Now, why don't I go into the details? Well, we're going to have to kill you if you tell anybody, promise. And there's a reason for this. This should show you how delicate this is. When we launched this thing, we're down now to 4 of us, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. When we launched this, if their version gets out first, if what they tell their side, look at all the good stuff we got, and that comes out in the paper, we won't get a single Republican vote. If our side says, look, if us Republicans say to our side, look at all the good stuff we got, and the Democrats can't tell their guys, yeah, but look at all the good stuff we got, then we won't get a single Democrat vote. And this bill will not be passed by the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. This bill will be passed by both, or it won't pass. Because on the Democrat side, there are estimated 40 to 45 members that won't vote for anything. On our side, 50 to 55 members won't vote for anything. So how are we going to pass it without getting together? That's why it's so important that we don't disclose the workings of this bill until it is dropped in the hopper and launched. We have to meet with every committee chairman ahead of time so they know what's coming their way, so they don't kill a bill. Any committee chairman can kill a bill. And we have to meet with every ranking member, which is the minority side, make sure they don't kill the bill. It's very, very complicated. I wanted you to know about it because it's been something that's been on my heart as the right thing to do. And I can assure you that John Carter put some real tough law and order stuff in this bill. I mean, I didn't forget who I was when I went to Washington. But it's fair. It's punishment, but it's fair. And I believe it will stand scrutiny, and everybody will say it was fair. And I believe there will be people who will be able to work and live in our community, and they will be able to come out of the shadows and speak out and be part of our community without hiding. So that's the biggest lift we're going to have. What's the risk? Hey, you can all get mad at me and vote me out of office. But see, I'm like Burr Rabbit. Don't throw me in that briar patch called Round Rock. Oh, please don't throw me in that briar patch. It just happens to be where I like to live. I'll answer some questions as best I can, if anybody has one. April. Only thing we have left is the farm provisions, and the farmers and the labor unions are arguing right now. As soon as they decide whether they're going to do it or not, we'll put our own provisions in and we'll launch it. End of April. Who else?
Doug, what's your opinion on this situation with this German family that wants to homeschool their kids, and the Urkel administration wants to throw them out of the country, but yet we have all these illegal immigrants here that they're glad to hand out all these empowerment programs to?
I never heard of it. Never heard the story. I apologize. Never heard the story.
They came from Germany and wanted to escape. The German government wasn't going to let them.
They're here or they're over there?
They're here in the U.S. and our government wants to kick them out. Been on the news last 2 or 3 days.
They live here in Round Rock?
No, they're just, I don't know what.
I really haven't seen it.
Okay.
I mean, if they live here in Round Rock, I'll do something about it. But, you know, we've got lots of people that a good lawyer can get you, you can stay in this country, I guarantee you. For a period of time, not forever, but you can get you a good lawyer. They spend about $1,000 and I guarantee you, sanctuary is available for all if you know how to do it. So they can at least delay it.
Check this story out.
Okay, I will.
How does defunding work in the House? You defund the bill, I've heard that, well, they need to defund that.
Like defunding Obamacare. I've heard that a lot. The way it works is the Appropriations Committee does not appropriate the money. Now, a lot of money has come from the executive branch, which is not part of the funding that's come out of and the funding for Obamacare comes from like 25 different sources. It's not just one line item, Obamacare, healthcare. Comes out, there's some in my committee, there's some in almost every committee, some form or fashion. And you just basically, but most of the spending that they've been doing in writing the regulatory acts have been coming out of the executive branch, their budget, White House, if you will. You can do it, it sounds great. Tactically, it's pretty hard to do. I mean, I think there's some of us would do it, but there's not the votes to get all of it done. That's a much bigger question than I can answer right here afterwards. Let me, before the question comes, there's one question you're all going to want to know. Is the Homeland Security Department buying up bullets? It's the number one question in Texas. I have had my staff and the committee staff write me a white paper as to why you can't go to Walmart and buy 380 or 9mm ammunition, and I did it last Saturday, and I can tell you, you can't buy it, okay? And you can't buy it at Academy or any place else in this town. But it has nothing to do with Homeland Security buying up bullets. It has to do with the fact that the American public made the biggest run on guns and ammunition in the history of the Republic the day after Barack Obama was elected president. That's the truth. And they bought up all the ammunition, and every time a new load comes in, they buy that too. It is a supply and demand issue. I've got all the production numbers from all the bullet manufacturers. They've all accelerated their production numbers, and they say it's a phenomenon beyond all belief on any market, that by the time they get a load to the Walmart in Round Rock, 30 minutes later it's gone. No matter how much they send, it's gone. And it's not Homeland Security, it's you that are buying all the bullets. And I bought 1,000 rounds myself.
Yes, sir. Judge, do you see any hope for either tax reform or entitlement reform in this session coming?
I think there's hope for tax reform, and there's going to have to eventually be entitlement reform, or we're done for. I think we're going to have tax reform. The Ways and Means Department is doing their best to do tax reform. A lot of it, the first round, will be business-oriented and corporate-related to try to stimulate the economy. I think you'll see some reductions in corporate income tax. A perfect world would be to abolish it, because we pay it anyway. They don't pay it. But it does make a difference as to their world they finance in. But there's going to be an attempt. But that's all coming out of the House. The Senate doesn't want to do tax reform, except raise them. So the attempt's going to be made. I try to be positive about things and hope that there'll be a lightning strike on the Senate side. Common sense will come out of it. Or whatever, we're going to try. This year, we're going to try. Yes, sir.
Are there any updates you can share with us about our salamander friends and negotiations with Fish and Wildlife?
Yeah, a little bit. I've been dealing with the friendly salamanders now for 2 years. We finally got all the players in the game. Salado was staying out of it now. Now they're in it. I met with them yesterday. We've got either one or more salamanders that are possibly going to be placed on the Endangered Species Act, on the protected species. I say one or more because technically Fish and Wildlife says there's a Salado salamander, a Georgetown salamander, a Jollyville salamander, and a Barton Springs salamander. The Barton Springs salamander became protected 22 years ago and stopped all building in West Austin for that period of time. So he's a very popular guy among the environmentalists because he disappears sometime and they can say, oh my God, the salamanders are gone forever. But it comes back after the water comes back. It's kind of the way salamanders, God designed salamanders. But anyway, I think there's one salamander that lives in 5 different creeks. But then, that's the old kind of Central Texas common sense thing looks like to me. Bottom line is, it is serious. We joke about it, it's pretty darn serious. There's a lot of scientific studies being done. We've got pretty good science working for us in Williamson County. We've done a lot of work, the county spent a lot of money on scientists, and they've given us some good stuff to argue. We're at a point right now, and Corn and I both asked for a delay to give us more time to get science in, but we're going to have a lot of science in before the deadline. We will probably get an extension, and by that time we hope we'll have the preponderance of the evidence of science be that there is no shortage of salamanders in Central Texas, and that they don't need to place them on the list. But if they do, and believe me, at least a portion of Fish and Wildlife is run by those crazy people that live down there around Guadalupe University of Texas. You know, the ones that sell beads on the corner? Those guys, they run fish, and they think that all human activity should cease on behalf of animals, and microscopic and others. So seriously, if they list it, it will be a big setback for growth in Round Rock. Big setback. Because once they list it, the whole water course, if they even let you build, the stuff you're going to have to do to keep runoff out of the water is going to greatly raise the price of poker. It's going to get much more expensive to build. Anything that puts any kind of chemicals in the water, including oil, will be a really big deal. So we're better off when we keep them from listing those salamanders. The reason I say there's all kinds of scientific evidence. In fact, if you look it up in a textbook, you'll probably read this. In the desert area where there are salamanders, and believe me, in the overall scope of things, we live in the desert. Because rainfall is the issue of desert. We live in the desert. When the creek dries up, the salamanders go up the spring sources all the way to the source of the spring, and enough to reproduce and come back out, survive in that moist atmosphere. That's built into their design. That's how they protect themselves in drought. They go up the path till they get to the source of the spring. If the spring dries up, they die. But at least there's some springs that doesn't dry up, and that's how they survive. So if you are the guy that goes around the creek and looks for stuff and you don't see salamanders, when the creek starts to get dry, you say, oh my God, salamanders have all died. The endangered species, holy cow, there's no more salamanders. But then when the rains come and the springs start working again, all of a sudden, miraculously, we got salamanders again. So the science is such that they are a mysterious little creature that disappears a lot. And whenever it disappears, the environmentalists get all bent out of shape about it. And when he comes back, they think a miracle has occurred or something. I don't know what they think. But the government will shut down your business if you got endangered species. They shut down I-195, which we are finally going to finish, for cave beetles. It cost Williamson County the price of 3 caves. Does anybody know what a cave goes for in Williamson County? Around $1 million. Don't you wish you had a cave? If you'll sell the county a cave and agree not to mess with it, and if there's that stupid beetle or that stupid spider in there, it's worth $1 million. Take care of your caves. And that's what we spent $3 million to protect a spider and a cave beetle or a cave bug. And if you're old Round Rock, you probably have heard of a place called the Rattlesnake Inn that's on 195. My daddy used to say that's a cut and shoot place, you know. The only thing that could happen in there is you get shot or get cut. Well, The reason it's called a rattlesnake inn is because there's a rattlesnake cave underneath it. I didn't know that. I've lived here for almost 50 years. We had to pay $1 million for that stupid cave. And it has a beer joint sitting on top of it. Other questions? Thank you. Remember, you are blessed.